Tea time with librarians. Welcome everyone to Tea Time with Librarians. My name is Lacey Klemm and I'm the Northwest Regional Coordinator for the Indiana State Library, and our guest today is Dr. Michella Marino, Deputy Director of the Indiana Historical Bureau, which is a division of the Indiana State Library. Dr. Marino, thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me this morning.
Are you ready to spill some tea?
Well, not tea, coffee, but yes, I am ready. Tea in the afternoon for me, coffee in the morning.
Absolutely. So to start, please give us a brief description of what you do.
Yes, well, I do lots of things, but my official title is Deputy Director of the Indiana Historical Bureau, which is a little bit confusing because we are a part of the state library. But the Historical Bureau, we were our own agency for 100 years. And then I think it was 2018, we formally merged with the library. And then we became one of three divisions of the state library. So we have public services, statewide services, and then we have the Historical Bureau. So then within the Historical Bureau, we have three departments: the Rare Books and Manuscripts Department, the Digital Initiatives Department, and then our Public History Department. So I oversee all three of those departments. And that entails a wide variety of work with colleagues in the department, but then sort of managing programs and things like that too. But the way I sort of view the Bureau is that we have the Rare Books and Manuscripts collections, and the librarians that work within that department are helping preserve Indiana history through the collections themselves. And of course, we have a wide variety of collections that expand beyond Indiana too. And then we have our Digital Initiatives Department, which works with libraries and history organizations across the state to help digitize their collections. And then we have the public history folks that help pull stories from all of those and communicate that to the public. So that's kind of how I see the three departments working together.
I didn't even realize there was like three departments right for the Indiana Historical Bureau. I've only been at ISL now for like a little over a year, so I'm still learning so much,
Yeah.
and it's so fun to learn more about it.
For sure. And of course, our Rare Books and Manuscripts Department still provides public services like the rest of the sort of library departments as well. But yeah, that's sort of how our division is organized.
Awesome. So the description on the website kind of says that the Indiana Historical Bureau provides publications, programs, and other opportunities for Indiana citizens of all ages to learn and teach about the history of their communities, the state of Indiana, and the relationships to the nation of the world. The Indiana Historical Bureau also administers the Indiana Historical Marker Program. So can you tell us a little bit more on how Indiana residents can utilize these publications, programs, and other opportunities?
Yeah, so for being such a sort of small organization, we do a lot, and we like to work with communities across the state. So really, up until probably the turn of the 21st century, maybe the first decade within, we used to do a lot of print publications. Like we printed our own book series. We worked with the Historical Society on publications. We've really shifted over, much like the field, to digital publications as well. But we have a blog, we have a podcast, we do the marker program, like you mentioned, and a lot of other programming as well that both we initiate, but then we also partner with other organizations to do. But so we view ourselves as historians that are doing storytelling as well. So we are trying to take primary sources, primary research that we do, and then we translate that to the public through a variety of means. And again, that could be online publications, that could be in-person programming, that could be giving lectures. Also with digital initiatives, we oversee Indiana Memory, which is a digital hub for collections across the state, and also Hoosier State Chronicles, where we digitize historic newspapers from across the state. We've been doing that for the last 15 or so years as well. So we just have a variety of programs and resources for folks to use that help them learn more about their local communities, but then also see how that plugs into the larger statewide history, and then into the national context as well. So we think it's important to start with the local and then expand that out.
I I'm familiar with Indiana Memory because
Mhm.
the library that I previously worked at, we were fortunate to get an LSTA grant, and so we had started to
Mhm.
digitize and put stuff on Indiana Memory. So,
Yeah.
if there's one resource that I think I would like more Indiana residents to know about is definitely, I think, Indiana Memory, because there's just an array of information on there from all over the state, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool.
We don't necessarily have not everyone is plugged into that, but a lot of organizations are, and that just helps the research process. So let's say, for instance, you're interested in learning more about Civil War letters as opposed to looking at 10 different institutions, right? You can plug that into Indiana Memory, and then those come up across the board. So that really helps to see what's out there, and connects the collections as well. So I think that is a great resource, and that is free, which is important. And so is Hoosier State Chronicles. I mean, there's a lot of great resources out there like newspapers.com and Ancestry, but you have to have subscriptions to get to those. So that's what we see ourselves doing at the Bureau, and of course the State Library as well, as providing resources to the public that makes information more accessible, at lower cost.
Free is always great.
Yes. Mhm, mhm. Turns out it is.
Um, what is one Indiana Historical Bureau service that you would like Indiana libraries to know more about?
Yeah. So one thing that we have been doing for the past 6 or so years is, there was legislation that was passed in 2017 and then really went into effect 2018 as we started the program. But that's the Indiana Legislative Oral History Initiative. So there was a law that was passed that mandated that the Bureau start an oral history program to interview former state legislators. So once they get out of office, and then sort of create like an archive for these interviews. So we have been interviewing state legislators for 6 years about not only like, what was the most important piece of legislation that you worked on, or what issues, do you think Indiana was facing during your time in office, but also about how like the state has changed and what issues have been important. And so I think we have 85 interviews now publicly available. You can listen to those through our online archive as well. And we're also working to get those as a collection into Indiana Memory. We think more researchers might access them that way. But we also are providing transcripts with those. We only have about half transcribed so far because that's a very long process. AI is helping with that, but that to do that manually takes a lot of time. But I feel like that's an underutilized resource that folks don't know that we have, and it's interesting because they can be issue based, where folks are talking about major legislation that has affected the state, but it also is just really interesting to learn about how people come into politics, how people come into state government. I think we have a lot of stereotypes about who these people are. And if you listen to these interviews, you find out that is actually not true. That's not the case. And so I really think that's an underutilized collection, and one that I hope continues to grow. And now that we have a nice set of interviews publicly available, we are going in to mine the data as well and be like, here's all the legislators that talked about X. Here's all the legislators that talked about Y. And so we're hoping to create some resources for the classroom, for researchers based off of that information as well. And we're learning a lot about Indiana history from the legislators too. So that is, we've again been doing that for about 6, 7 years now. And I just feel like that's a program that I would love more folks to know about and to be able to use.
Do you offer, like, for the public libraries to do like uh a workshop on that, to like let
Mhm.
them know what that's all about and how, maybe they can help spread the word a little bit for it?
Yeah, actually a couple of different ones. One, we have a presentation that I give fairly frequently, and then we also have just recently hired a new oral historian, so he will be trained to give some of these talks as well. But just on the lessons that we're learning about Indiana politics and Indiana government that we think are important for Hoosiers to know, and just about the history of the project and how it unfolded and why we think it's important. But also we give oral history trainings. So that is a great resource for libraries and small historical societies who are wanting to start their own oral history projects. So I'm a trained oral historian and have been doing that for like over 20 years, which makes me feel real old to say. But so I love talking about the process of oral history and what that looks like and how community groups can use that methodology and that training as well. So I very frequently give like either workshops or just sort of talks or presentations on oral history and how communities can use that too.
Well, I wish I would have known that when I was at my former library because we actually had started up an oral history
Mm-hmm.
program because
Yeah.
we wanted to preserve that history of,
Mm-hmm.
some of our community that was obviously starting to age and be able to get um, their history.
Yeah.
So, hmm, I I'm glad to know that.
Yes.
I'll
Yes.
pass that information along onto them because I'm sure that they would be interested
Yeah.
to get more information.
Yeah, please do. That's a pretty popular one for us because a lot of like again, libraries have recently got like oral history or sound booths or I haven't had enough coffee or tea this morning. Words are hard. They have, received grants to like have a soundproof room or an oral history studio. A lot of libraries that's become more popular in recent years, or just like historical societies or organizations saying just exactly what you've said. We've got these really interesting folks in the community, and we want to get their stories. Preserve their stories and just want a little guidance on what that looks like, how to form questions, what kind of equipment is out there, what
Mhm.
technology to use, how do you preserve them. So those are all things that we cover and talk through.
Yes, I would have that's amazing because we did our research, but we basically
Yeah.
started with like an iPad and a little,
Mhm.
microphone, but it worked
Yeah,
for our needs, but
for
knowing
sure.
how to grow in that is also
Mhm.
really beneficial. So,
Yeah. When sometimes it's just overwhelming, like when you start to do your own research, there's just so much out there. You're like,
mm,
where do I focus in on, or what can I trust in terms of what's out there? So sometimes just having a little
absolutely.
guidance or someone to ask questions to, I think is helpful.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
So what is your biggest wish when it comes to the Indiana Historical Bureau?
Yes. So I first want to put in a little bit of a plug for our state historical marker program. So we've been operating the program since the 1940s and actually goes even earlier into the 1930s with some WPA funds that we got to mark historic sites around the state or historic events around the state, but really became formalized in 1946. And so we have overseen that program and really have grown that program a lot. We have I think close to 800 state historical markers across the state that cover important people, events, all sorts of things that have happened that have both statewide significance or national significance. So it does go beyond the local. It does need to have at least statewide significance that just tells a wide array of history and topics from agricultural to sports history to women's history to whatever. We have such a wide array of topics. But, and this gets to my wish list item, we have historical markers in 91 of 92 Indiana counties. And Jay County is our last holdout. We do not have a marker there. And the way the marker program works is we do not come into communities as the state and say, hey, this is what we think is important. This is what we think you should mark. It actually works the opposite way, where communities come to us and say, this is our history. We would like, a marker on this topic. And of course, there's an application process that is open every year from early April and closes in mid-July. And then we review the topics. We're a small staff, so we can't always do all of them. But we tend to do between 15 and 18 new markers a year. And so we work with the communities, and that can range from an individual to a library or historical society or other humanities type organization to do a deep dive research into the topic, gather primary sources related to it, and then work together to craft the text that will go on the historical marker. So it really is a shared authority piece between us and constituents on the ground and our partners on the ground, and then do a marker dedication and all that. But I say all that to say there is history in Jay County and we want to tell it. And I really would love to have a marker there so I can say we at least have a marker in every single county across the state. So we've been talking with folks there, but really hope that we get an application this cycle so we can say that we have all 92 counties covered. So that's my big wish list item right now.
So that's our little shout out to Jay County for, maybe 2025 is the year.
Mm-hmm. And we know that there's a famous actor, Leon Ames from Jay County, or has ties, which I was not familiar with that name myself, but he plays the father in the classic movie Meet Me in St. Louis with Judy Garland, and he's in a couple other really famous, or actually a lot of really famous films too. Some of the others are slipping my mind right now, but I think that would be a great one. But there's lots of other things that have happened there, so we just really would love to find a community partner that's willing to work with us on that.
So if I were wanting to see what markers are like in Lake County, how would I go about doing that?
Yeah, so if you go to our website, and then we have /markers or in.gov/histories/markers, but there's several tabs you can get to at a variety of different ways, and you can search by county, you can search by topic, but also hopefully within the next month, but we are really close to, we've been partnering with another state government agency, Management Performance Hub, to get an interactive GIS map that has a lot more features and interactivity built into it, where you can sort of sort out markers by, again, even more filters than what we have on our current site. So we're very excited to get that up and going. Again, we really hope that is done within a month or so. But we have folks that reach out all the time that say, I love, just going out for a Sunday drive and go to visit all these different markers and just learning about, history in different counties and across the state at large. So all that is available on our website. And so I guess the other plug I would put in is that our state markers, you can only put so much text on a marker. They're fairly big, but we can only fit 372 characters on each side. So sometimes I say we're the original Twitter, like a very condensed story onto the marker. But we also view that as a jumping off point for larger history. So if you go to our website, every single marker has its own web page, and it gives you all the primary sources that we use to craft that text. And sometimes they're annotated as well. That gives you even more detail that we couldn't fit on the marker. And then often, or not often, we do this all the time, we use the stories that we can't always fit onto the markers to drive a lot of our other programming. So we will then write a blog post about some aspect that, of course, didn't fully make it onto the marker, but then we can elaborate on here. A lot of our podcast episodes are based from sort of spinoffs from the markers as well. So once we really do that deep dive research into a topic, then we like to, yes, have a marker for it, but then also, expand the story out through a variety of different means.
That's not a lot of characters to put on a sign.
No, it's not.
So it is nice to know that you can go to the website and find more information and have a little bit more background on that.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I could definitely see families making that a little, we're going to check this off our, driving around Indiana list. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a component of ecotourism there too.
I'm sure I've seen them. I just didn't really, I guess, kind of equate that that's where they came from and that's what they're for. So
yeah, and I will say, because really anyone can put up a marker, but if it's a state marker, so it has the navy blue, it almost looks black. It's a really dark navy blue background with gold lettering. But then our markers, sometimes we have one in here, I don't, but they have a little like a sort of hump at the top, and in that space, there is the state of Indiana outlined in gold. So if it has the state of Indiana at the top in gold, then you know it is an official state marker. There are other organizations that sometimes put up their own local markers, and that's great. And we partner with different groups sometimes to help provide advice on that too. But so to know it as a state marker, it has the outline of the state at the top.
Very cool. Now I'm going to be on
Yeah.
the lookout for
Yes.
the
Yes.
state
Do.
markers.
Mm-hmm.
So one question that I ask everybody, because we
Mm-hmm.
are, we do work in libraries, whether
Mm-hmm.
you're a librarian or not,
Mm-hmm.
and most of us, I hate to say, not everyone has a love for reading. That's fine. But
Yes.
are
Sure.
you currently reading or listening to anything right now? And if not, maybe you have a current favorite
Mm-hmm.
television show that we would
Yeah.
like to hear about.
Yeah, well, I am a voracious reader, and I was thinking about this the other day. Like, if I do not have a good book that I am just like excited to read, like I just feel generally unsettled in my life. Like I have to be grounded by a good book. But um, so I'm a little embarrassed to share this, but I am a Hoosier, but I have never actually read Kurt Vonnegut's books. And so I have been sort of chipping away for a long time, still only about a third through, of Slaughterhouse-Five. I have deep respect for Vonnegut, and I really like his sense of humor. But I am a huge fiction reader, and I'm just going to put it out there. I love to read romance novels, and I'm not embarrassed about that.
Me too.
Yep. So, but I'm actually between books right now, and I just finished a really great mystery sort of thriller called First Lie Wins that I just read a couple, within the last week or two, and that was really good. I always like good mystery books too, and like cozy mysteries like Louise Penny. So that's kind of where I've been recently. But I try to have like a book that, little highbrow literature as well, and then my beach reads or my mystery novels or whatever. But I'm an equal opportunity reader for sure.
Yeah, I am a unapologetic romance
Hmm.
reader.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I
Yep. I hear you. I'm
I
with you
love
on that.
romance.
So
So that sounds great. Thank you so much again for being with us
yeah,
today. I feel
yeah.
like we, were able to kind of educate a little bit more on what the Indiana Historical Bureau
Mm-hmm.
does, and kind of tell people where they can find more information, obviously
Yeah.
through the website, but knowing that there's a blog out there and Indiana Memory and some of that
Hmm.
other stuff, I think is really, really great. So thank you so
Yeah.
much again.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was a pleasure talking with you and enjoyed having coffee with you today.
Okay.